Welcome to the Enablement Edge, the go-to resource for enablement and go-to-market pros. We're bringing you the secrets, strategies, and tactics that drive meaningful impact. You'll get valuable insights and expertise from enablement leaders so you can become an effective change agent, turn strategy into reality, and transform your organization for the better.
I'm Steve Watt. I am the host of the Enablement Edge. My co-host and friend and colleague, Heather Cole, is here. Heather, why don't you tell the folks what today's episode and today's session is going to be all about?
Absolutely. So, as you probably read in the title and the abstract, we are talking today about getting a seat at the table, but not only getting a seat, but a voice. When we talked about transformational enablement yesterday in Doug's keynote, and it kind of bled through some of the other ones as well, it's one of the things that we've seen and heard from our customers. And previous to this, I was actually a Forrester analyst, and I've been here for 4 years at Seismic. And a lot of the talk is around how do you not only earn the right and the credibility to have those strategic discussions, have that seat at the table, but what we're seeing is that what makes enablers successful in this and to really drive transformational enablement as we think of going from the whiteboard in the boardroom to the keyboards of the reps. When we think about that, it's really about having not just the ability and the right to sit there and listen at the table, it's about the ability to have the voice as well. So we've been having a series of these conversations on the podcast, and we thought it would be really interesting to bring up 3 diverse perspectives on this and how you actually go about this from a larger company, smaller company, mid-sized company, different industries. So we invited our 3 guests to be with us here today. Steve, why don't you introduce?
Come on up. Victoria, Micah, Eric, come on up. Say hello and introduce yourselves to the group.
Welcome.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us. Could you guys each, I understand you're going to be doing a little bit of microphone sharing here, in whatever order you'd like. Would you each just take a moment to introduce yourselves to the audience here? Let them know a little bit about your company and about your role.
Sure. My name is Micah Jacobson. I lead revenue enablement at Informatica. We are a data storage platform that uses some of the biggest companies in the world use our software to manage their data moving in and out of all the other systems that many of you represent.
Right, Victoria Sanchez. I am from Pure Storage. It's a data storage platform as well. And I've been at Pure for almost 4 years, which is such an innovative company. And we serve sales and partners. So I hope that our discussion today will allow you to extend your reach out of there.
I'm Eric Mingaorance. I'm a senior director of revenue enablement, go-to-market enablement. We actually call it sales and field enablement over there at Zixi. Zixi is also a software company. We are the leading software-defined video platform for live broadcast quality streaming. So if you watched the Super Bowl on Paramount Plus, our software was involved there. We have a lot of huge partners all over the world, from major league sports teams to the broadcasters themselves, but we have a very small global sales team. I've been there for just over about a year, used Seismic the majority of the time. I helped bring it on board, and I used it a little bit at another company.
So we're going to start out with the kind of the big level question. When we were preparing and having conversations for this session, we started getting a little bit into the table analogy too much. So some people referenced a picnic table, maybe a formal table at a wedding. There's a lot of different kinds of tables. But one of the things that we really want to understand is how do you earn that kind of credibility to go from not just a seat to a voice at the highest level. Victoria, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that it's more than building your own table. It's really more about finding the table and then make your voice be heard. I can share a little bit of the experiences that we had at Pure. Enablement has really transformed the way we are perceived in the organization. And that's not an easy place to be, but I think we have earned that right. With a lot of the effectiveness that we have put into some programs, we have really created a difference at that point. In my mind, really having a seat at the table table is because you are really a decision maker. You are considered, you're part of the big company initiatives, but it's also a big responsibility on our end. It's a lot about planning. How do you need to prepare your enablement teams? How do you get in front of your sales leaders and they respect where you are driving? And very importantly, we have seen a lot of traction with cross-functional parties. We work very closely with marketing, product marketing, not only sales, right, but HR, sales operations. We're big brothers and sisters all the time. And the fact that as of today, we have really earned the right to be heard because what we say matters. I think that's a big point. What we say matters.
Yeah. Credibility is a huge piece of that, isn't it? It's how do you earn the right to have the conversations and earn the right to be able to actually, have something to say that's meaningful to them and they believe that what you're saying is true coming out of the technology. So any other thoughts on that one?
I would say patience.
Yeah.
We live in a fast world. Most of you are being pressured all the time. I'm constantly being pressured. And I have to constantly remind me and my team, it takes time. You don't just get to walk in and own your seat. You have to prove your value, and you have to do it over and over. I try to remember for myself, I'm constantly whispering in my own ear, 3 Ps. Patience, persistence, presence. Be there, be patient, be persistent. Don't go away.
I love it.
Go ahead.
The only other thing I might add there is actions are going to speak louder than words. Yeah. So you should just do what you say you're going to do and follow up with action.
You reminded me of a thought. I love the word follow, because one of the things that I can think when you are really looking for a seat at the table is get out of that being informed seat. We have to inform enablement. Yeah. We have to talk to them. You have to transform that, in my mind, into a follower. Right? Become that influencer in the company, because what you say matters, because we have helped other cross-functional teams, and that is not only the work that we put with our teams is really gain the right because you understand what the company is looking for and you connect and align across multiple organizations.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Micah.
Just drag out the first
go ahead.
question
Go
for
right
like
ahead.
10 years.
We'll never have to ask another one.
Come to you.
And now I'm going to forget what I had to say on that. The other thing you can really do is it just doesn't have to be what you're saying, but you could earn a seat at the table if you help promote and amplify what the leaders want said anyway. So if you're a good listener at that table, if you understand and align with the objectives, and then you're saying, I can help you promote that into places it might not be heard or have it be reinforced. If you can be a good promoter, that also can earn you a seat at the table.
It's like the wireless repeater in my house. It just keeps pushing it out and out.
That's what my wife calls me, the wireless repeater.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's a good thing.
Let me build on the word you just said, Eric, alignment, right? I think you're all addressing that topic. Micah, let me go to you. How do you really build that alignment, in particular with senior leadership, to really demonstrate the impact that enablement is having in the firm?
Yeah, it's such a delicate balance because you've got to do 2 things simultaneously. You've got to listen really closely to what it is that they want you to align to, because you can't go off on your own, and you have to come with a point of view. I really think in enablement, we are sellers. We are selling enablement. We're selling it to our field sales teams, and we're also selling our voice and our perspective to our senior leadership. So I want to know where they want me to go, but then I also want to be able to give them new information that maybe they're not seeing that allows them to see something different. Maybe there's a challenger sale inside of each enabler trying to say, we see things just a little different, and we can provide a different perspective that might be of some additional value.
So it really is a balance. So you can't just be an order taker and a follower, but you also, as you said, you can't just go charging off on your own path and expect senior leadership to follow you.
I don't know about this room, but I hate the word order taker. Drives me crazy. That is not what I signed up for. I wasn't in kindergarten being like, I want to be an order taker one day. And so many of us in enablement, we fall into that trap because we don't come with new information. If you come with new information, you shift from an order taker to a strategic partner. That's certainly the direction that I and my team where we want to go.
Eric, you're in a much smaller firm than our other guests. Is the answer essentially the same, or do you have a different lens on it given the different size of the firm?
I mean, the the output or the outcome might be slightly different. But as Renee said on the main stage today, if you think of your enablement team or your enablement self as a business inside the business, then to have the perspective and to listen is treating your stakeholders like customers. And so you really need to come from their perspective of what are the problems they're trying to solve, what are their business goals, how does my program or initiative align with their business goals, what's in it for them, like you would for a customer. You have to be speaking their language and talking about things that they care about. It's kind of obvious, but even the sellers that we're trying to teach us, they don't do it, and we speak, LMS should not even be said to an executive. They don't care what that 3-letter acronym is, right? That you need to be talking to them about ROI.
Yeah, so go ahead.
And what about, for example, when you create alignment and what you really need to think about is becoming this observer. That is a magical position to be as enablers, and hopefully the audience have had this experience as well. When in enablement, you are the one that is helping everybody communicate, because it turns out that function 1 is asking me for something, function 2 is asking me for something totally different in the same direction, and function 3 is against even the policies that I need to follow. So then we have to get them and really create this alignment. Sometimes it has happened to us that we really have to put them in the table and say, have you guys talked to each other? Because, it seems like it's not working. So we have really become a third-party observer that has no take into a specific requirements or a specific business, and we are consulted at that point, and that becomes very valuable because it's faster. You make better decisions at that point.
Yeah, I love that because it's very, the question is out there, like, how do you become a consultant within the organization as an enablement leader? That is a really big way because you see everybody's perspective on it, and you become kind of the flower to the oil in the water.
One just somewhat easy way to unify people is say, let's take it from our customer's perspective. What does our customer want? Because they don't see you in the silos. They're trying to buy one unified thing, and it's not different, the marketing they're seeing, how they got sold, how they got onboarded, how they get treated in customer success or whatever you call that. They see it as one company X, and so a way to unify all those different functions that are coming to you with different things and say, what is the priority for our customer? Because that's what we probably want to address.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think the other one is, and we talked about this a little bit in the prep, is the empathy for the roles that are delivering it, and how do you develop that? So I think one of the things that I wanted to switch gears. Oh, you want to say something?
No, I just didn't want to talk about empathy.
Oh, God
Talk
forbid.
about empathy.
You've been around sales too long.
I do have a lot to say about empathy, Eric. You reminded me of something very important. Empathy for us in enablement, at least in the experiences that we have had, is really to make sure that you are part of that development. Something that has happened traditionally, always working with product marketing teams, asking the subject matter expert to create the content. You cannot just go there and say, hey, can you do this? And it needs to be done in a certain amount of time because sales kickoff is in 6 months and we need to get ready. 6 months when you do it with proper time. We never do it, by the way. But at that point, I've seen so many differences when instead of asking them, hey, can you do this? Hey, let's do this together. And let me show you what I'm thinking, show me what you're thinking, and let's build a recipe. That has been transformational. And in our case, I always tell my team this, is we need to be empathic, we need to be this listener, and sometimes you just have to go through that wave.
Yeah. It reminds me, and I can't remember which one said, it was collaboration, credibility, and communication, the 3 Cs. I'm guessing it was you because you're into alliteration, but maybe not.
I've been known to alliterate.
Yeah.
When we're thinking about that level, it's really at 2 levels. You're thinking about communicating at your senior level, and we're talking about having a seat at the table. We're building at Informatica what we think of as the Enablement Council, once a quarter trying to get our senior leaders, who are critical stakeholders, to come together. I'm a massive fan of ranked choice voting, not trying to make a political statement, but it works in our business world as well. Well, I want to get them together and say, here is what we're hearing as the priorities. Give me a sense of what your stack rank blind from each other. And immediately all of them start to see, oh, this product launch has to go up against our new methodology, which is also competing against our release schedule, which is also competing against all of the other kind of administrative things, the tool training that we're going to do. And suddenly we get a conversation going around which one is actually most important at the table. Conversely, I want to show programs and learning to my field. And there's amazing resistance to this, and I'm not quite sure why, but if we build something, I want to put it in front of a seller and say, I want to watch you learn. And they're always a little weird about that. You're going to watch me learn? But in a distributed world, it's not that hard. I can watch them take one of our courses, and I can interrupt them. What are you thinking right now? What's going on? Where's the impact? I notice you just skipped right through that one. Why? That then, when I go to the Enablement Council, gives me the ability to say, I've watched our sellers learn. I know what they're experiencing. Let me give you some data that can then inform this conversation. And when I have both of those angles, I feel like I have a lot more opportunity to have influence.
I'm hearing you say, don't underestimate the creeper factor.
Right. Just appropriate creepiness, I suppose, is. I'm not sure if I want to be on record for that, but yes.
Here you go. We'll cut it out when we read it.
I would also say I love the Enablement Council. I've done that at several different companies that I've been at. That is building your own table, so if you don't understand what that means, if you're not invited to the table, then you say, hey, I want all the VPs or the leaders from all the orgs to come to my Enablement Council, and you tell them what's what. Whether you're going to their table or they're coming to your table, one other thing to keep in mind with that is lobbying. You need to lobby for these things. You don't want them to hear it for the first time at the council or at the table. Kind of like a bill, you need to go and lobby the individual folks, see if there are objections, make sure you can kind of get preliminary buy-in beforehand, work with each individual org separately so that by the time you come to the table, they've already heard it, you basically have buy-in, and then you're doing what you say, we're getting the priorities, we're all coming on the same page for the priorities, we're in agreement, there are no major showstoppers or blockers because you've basically done some pre-seeding.
Yeah, and what I'm also hearing here too is this is taking what big topic in enablement, the charter, to do or not to do. Are they a waste of time? Do they get thrown, on the back of the desk and we never look at them again? What you just described is really a living charter. So you're revalidating your scope and your prioritization as you're having these conversations so that everybody's on the same page. So when you get to the end of the year and say, wait a minute, this is what we focused on because you told us 12 months ago to this focus on, like 8 months ago, that changed. Yeah.
And let's quickly plug the Enablement Edge, because I'm pretty sure there's a great episode on building an enablement charter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there always is.
And one of the things that you have been highlighting, Heather, is getting that documented. It's extremely important, and we normally don't have the time to do that because we're running super fast. At the end of the Edge, it's already 3 months in, and we didn't document the things. And I've seen the effect of not doing it is super impactful. So we really, as enablers, I think we need to stop the train and really understand what are the priorities that we need to document so that we can really converse in that, right? We also have some councils at Pure Storage, and one of the things that I noticed is we have to make sure that we don't fall into, this council again, right? Because we're not doing anything valuable, but how to document valuable action items to what you said, Eric, that I think that's very clever, is get commitments from each individual function and then align those commitments to the council objective and then document that into a plan that can be tested. I think getting that time is going to be very important.
I love that we're getting into some specific tactics here, like your stack ranking and the lobbying and the watching people learn. And sometimes sessions like this are guilty of staying way up in the clouds about what we hope to achieve and not really getting into exactly how we're going to do it. So I would like to pull on that thread a little bit more. Tactics, but maybe in a slightly different lens. What sort of tactics are you each using to make sure that the accomplishments and the impact of your enablement organization are really being seen and felt and understood throughout the organization? So not just alignment at the senior leader level, but how are you getting the word out on the street so that people really understand what you're bringing to the business? Go ahead, Victoria.
One, for us, it's we call it the enablement branding. We went into a whole journey of nobody knows what we do, really. They assume things that we are doing here. So we started doing a lot of specific campaigns around communication through multiple groups inside the organization. Those campaigns were directed, were targeted. For example, we had enablement for sales leaders as champions. And that word champions became some sort of a route where we had a selected group of people in sales leaders where we always invite them to a specific important releases or enablement programs, and they become like kind of pilot testers. And then you get those champions, and then they speak to other leaders, and they speak to their teams. So that has been very important for us, bringing the brand, highlighting the brand. The other thing that we did for the brand is ask the executive team what were their perspective or was or is about enablement. And we realized that the narrative around enablement is absolutely different across the executive teams. So we took the time to align. It has to be one enablement function, one enablement direction, so that everybody will route to the same boat, right? One was going to Japan, the other one was going to South America, so it didn't work that way. So we kind of give them some examples. So those two things, at the side of the communication process, have been very helpful for us.
Back in the 90s, I lived a little bit up the road in Portland, Oregon, and I managed an independent rock and roll band, as one does during the grunge era.
In Portland.
And it's that guerrilla marketing is kind of the same thing. You know, it is 7 ways, 7 times, in 7 different channels. I would basically, if we had telephone poles inside of our office, I would staple up posters in there. You need to kind of get that information out in a Slack channel. I'll do a road show. Here's a slide with a QR code to drive you. If you drive people to where I want on the platform or to the information or the landing page, could you just have that inside of your meeting? Can I come to your meeting? I'd be happy to be there. We talked last night about, hey, can we get a couple of minutes before the all hands to highlight a win story and kind of say, hey, we'll help you do the fireside chat or the interview. So you want to be, to kind of promote, not only do you want to help amplify and promote their message, but you have to do your own brand, and you have to do it in this like every way you can possibly think of. I've done internal podcasts. I mean, you name it. If you want to talk to me over drinks, I can tell you how when I get older, just a little bit, I'll write a book called Everything I Needed to Know I Learned by Managing a Rock and Roll Band.
I just got to say, that is great. And I think we all need to think like band managers. We all need to think like guerrilla marketers. That's fantastic.
I just have a question for you. Have you created a rock band inside the company yet?
Not this company, but several other companies. Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah.
Of course.
Micah, what about you? You got some additional tactics that you
We're
use
getting better. Yeah, we're getting better. And this is an endless journey. You constantly are looking for new ways. We are getting better at using our seismic notification. I don't know how many of you are using that moment you have when a seller logs in. It's gold, and we should all be maximizing that opportunity. The second thing is if I want to add value, I also want to acknowledge value. If I'm getting sellers to let me watch them learn, if we're getting their input on products or programs that we're rolling out, then I want to acknowledge that. And so this year, for the first time, we're going to have at our sales kickoff a Heroes of Enablement session where we're going to bring them in and say, hey, thanks for the effort and support that we gave them. At a previous company, we called this the League of Extraordinary Sellers. We want them to say, hey, we love supporting enablement, we love being a part of enablement, and we want to continue doing that. Then maybe, just maybe, they become champions for us out in the field, saying, hey, you guys, this enablement that we just rolled out, it's making a real difference in my performance.
Yeah.
We have gone regional. That has also been very helpful for us. Regional means that we have decided to invest in enablement resources that will connect with specific regions, especially EMEA, APJ, Americas, because they're so different that we got tired of this notion of everything is like in the US and everybody thinks that nobody else understands the rest of the world. And we started doing a lot of specific programs that would connect with specific audiences across the globe. That gave us a lot of credibility. That was really, really helpful.
I'm sure that it did. That is really important because that U.S. centricity can really be detrimental in a lot of other areas, can it?
Just one quick pro tip to back up Micah on use the announcements that pop up you might not know this, but you can actually use a couple of HTML tags in there for the bold, and you can put a link. So it's a little bit manual. Be nice to also be able to put an image in there if anyone's listening. Yeah, that way not only does it pop up, but you can have them take action and click right to the landing page or asset that you wanted to highlight.
Good to know. So one of the things I wanted to make sure that we hit on, because it's always a hot topic, and it has been for a while, which is measurement. And there's some perspectives out there that says the most powerful thing to give you a voice is to have those actual insights and measurement to bring back to senior leadership, to give them things that they might not have seen, to show results, of course, and to show value, but also to give them greater insight. There's also been a lot of dissent and disagreeing opinions on whether or not you should be saying we are tying enablement to those lagging indicators. Because when you launch a product and the product launch doesn't go well, everybody's pointing fingers about pricing, it doesn't work, it was the competition, whatever it was, but it wasn't our fault. The reality is when it goes right, everybody takes credit. But when you're looking at leading and kind of those micro leading indicators, how are you thinking about what is important to the executive leadership, obviously what's important to them, but how do you realistically, in a credible way, tie it back to the programs that you're actually doing?
I mean, I feel like you can't be in enablement these days and not talk about measurement. It's in all of our lives. I'm a little bit of a theorist in this. I believe in the Kirkpatrick model. I think there's only 6 things that we're all measuring. We're all measuring production, consumption, reaction, learning, behavior, impact. There's only 6 things. There's no other things to measure. There's just sub-bullets between each of those. What I realize is that in each one of those levels, you lose a little control and you introduce some confounding variables. It gets harder to establish causation. I have total control, or my team we have total control over our production. We know what we're putting out there. We don't have total control over the consumption. We have less control over the reaction. We have even less control over the learning. Now we're competing with their childhood teacher who taught them how to read. I can't control, that's beyond. So at every level, what I'm trying to do is let my stakeholders know we're getting less and less control, but we're getting more and more important influence. So I want to be able to stand in front of them and say, listen, the preponderance of evidence is every time we launch a program, it seems to be doing pretty good things on the bottom end of that. I'm not going to take total credit. You have an amazing sales team. I won't take credit. Our product marketers are fantastic. CS is crushing it. We all are playing a part in this positive sales momentum, but we are playing a part, and that's where I want my team to be able to stand with some degree of pride. So know what you're measuring, and then understand where you have control and where you don't.
I like the know what you're measuring. I think as an enabler, it's so important that you understand the narrative from metrics. Every single cross-functional team that we have at Pure asks us about metrics. So it has become a little bit harsh because it's a very difficult question to solve, as probably most of you know, connecting the dots between what an intangible is with content consumption, utilization. Those doesn't necessarily connect with selling more. And the first question that leaders want is, how am I going to train my teams so that they can close more deals in something as specific? And there's not such a correlation like that. So we have invested actually in creating something that we call the unified data model. This has been working in the back end of systems to interconnect everything so that we can come up with, that's an ideal, we are in the midst of it, but we have the first phase that interconnected the platforms for content and content assessment engagement. So we can control training records, and we can control utilization of assets, for example, views, downloads, engagement of certain materials. And now our next phase, to your question, Heather, is we're connecting with our sales operations teams so that we can interconnect with performance metrics, right? Productivity, participation, bookings, pipeline. That is the ideal state. And everything is in the back end. It's been a tremendous amount of work, but that's the ultimate goal. How can we have a resource for enablers to be able to speak clearly to sales leadership when they ask about a program? And instead of just giving them a record timeline, okay, we had so many attendees. 80% of your team completed the training, but that's not necessarily connecting with whether they're closing more deals or not. So that's our ultimate goal. But that unified data model is starting to show some good lights.
Yeah.
Could I ask a question in this? Eric, you've probably got one. We always talk about what you do to measure. I'm always curious, what do you do when the metrics are bad?
I was going to talk about that. I was a sales engineer for many years at Akamai, and believe it or not, sometimes the metrics are bad. So the first thing you do is you get a lot of metrics, because only some of them are going to help you paint the story. And that's the key. The key is to tell the story. Sometimes the metrics are bad. We had a 25% completion rate. Why is that? What does that mean our next action is? Was it that we were off the mark with the timing? Maybe, last week of the quarter for these things to be due? Not such a great time. Maybe the content was off the mark. Maybe it didn't move the needle. I think I'd like all the metrics to collect, but you'd have to tell a story. So yes, lagging indicators, what are you going to do? Well, we want to sell more. We want to drive revenue. Okay. What kind of leading indicators do we have for that? Does that mean bigger pipelines? Does that mean more intelligent discovery questions? Does that mean that we're only going to bring in SMEs when we've already qualified somebody very specific for the questions that the SME says, don't even bother bringing me onto a call until I see the answers of this in Salesforce? I think that you should be able to have both leading and lagging, and then pick from which ones work, or if they're all bad, then what does that say for a story? One other thing I would say in this, are we ready, right? We've been asking that these last couple of days, seems to be like a lagging indicator. So the leading indicator to get into that is, before you get asked that question, go to your leader or the field or both and say, what does readiness look like? So that I know when I'm going to answer that question, I know what you think readiness looks like. And so I can say, yep, we're ready. They are ready to go to NAB. We have the new demos all rolled out for everyone. They understand that we got a value proposition on total cost of ownership. They understand how that has a white paper. Everyone knows where to find the content. And they've done their practice pitches, because someone beforehand told me that's what readiness for NAB looks like. So I would maybe have that pre-question as a leading indicator.
Yeah, and sometimes leading indicators can be more powerful than the lagging, because lagging leaders can see, but they don't know why. And if you're the person that can tell them why, when you see the breadcrumbs, when you see them asking all sorts of questions in, like the co-pilot saying, tell me more about this pricing, you haven't done your job right, or you haven't put it where they need to see it. So I think that's a really powerful thing, is the leading indicators is your secret sauce sometimes.
And it's usually where the behavior change lies.
Yeah.
And you have to make it easy for them to receive that message throughout those indicators, whatever you decide, but also for them to acknowledge what you want them to acknowledge in time. So sales leaders don't have a lot of time, so you need to make sure that what you're delivering, it has the same context all the time, so they know what to expect, but at the same time, it's so easy that everybody will understand your message. I think the message is behind that scene of those metrics, right? So how do you do that? What kind of indicators will be delivered for certain groups, I think is different to another set of groups. So one of the things that we've been trying to do is, what is the right investment of resources, people, to get somebody to help us with those metrics, right? And from the team that you have, who's the most skilled to have those analysis? And how do you leverage your team to make sure that you can deliver those metrics on time? So at the end of a certain period, your cross-functional teams are going back to that trust, right? And all those sales leaders and cross-functional teams are really trusting that your decisions are coming from those indicators of your programs, or those, the result of your programs.
Unfortunately, some enablement leaders are stuck in executional delivery, whether they call it order taking or want to, but they're stuck in a place of executional delivery. What advice would you each offer to them to how they can up-level their own role and the impact and the perception of their team to really become strategic partners to leadership rather than just executional delivery? Why don't we start with you, Micah?
Hard question. I have two things that I think about all the time. I'm constantly delivering little tiny mini lectures to my sales leaders. I don't think they think of them as being lectures, but I'm constantly saying things like, how much information do you think a human being can take in all at once? And they're like, that's an interesting question.
Well, let me tell you.
And one of the lectures that I'm constantly giving is enablement does have a cost, and you think it's in the cost of how much you're paying our team or our salaries or whatever, but the real cost of enablement is time and attention. I have to get a seller to stop selling for some period of time and to go learn something. There's a time cost and there's an attentional cost. I have to make what they're learning more important than all of the other things. And so what I want to remind them, my sales leaders, I want to say, you have to be my partner in that cost and in paying that price. You have to tell them that it's worth it. You have to tell them that you care about it. You have to tell them that it matters that they offer that they pay that price, that they give their attention, that they use the time. Because without that partnership, I can't get it done. I'm so shocked at how many of them sort of nod their head, and when I say that, they go, "Oh, now it makes sense. Now I get why it is I need to be a part of the messaging, for instance, for rolling out a new program, because I need to be part of capturing that moment of attention." Small little mini lectures is part of how I'm moving the needle forward.
It's one of my, like a version of one of my favorite questions, which I use with my kids and sometimes in work, which is, help me understand. But I say it a little differently in work than I do at home.
I mean, I find it surprising that they want to be involved, they want to dictate, they want all their sellers to do all this stuff, and then you say, great, I just need you to review the curriculum first. And they're like, I don't have time for that. You're like, but do you think all your sellers have time for that? It's ironic to me.
Victoria, how do you, what advice would you offer to someone who's stuck in that executional delivery and really wants to up-level?
I would say two things. One is invest in getting your enablement team, whether that's a group of 2 or a team of 50 or whatever the amount of resources you have, in getting them really acknowledgeable about the company and what they do. They have to be aligned, they have to say the same message. So really coach them to succeed at that level, because they start representing yourself more and more. So I think that's one. The second one, very important, and it is for us extremely important with how the future is coming, technology investment, right? I know that we all our companies are trying to invest tremendous amount of money in technology. I think as an enablement organization, we have a great opportunity to stop the train and say which one is the best one, and make a plan for it. It doesn't have to change tomorrow, but if you make a plan for it to get the best technology, you can accelerate how your sales leaders are really coaching and having more time for other activities, while you also orchestrate workflows in the internal cross-functional teams so that you can operate more efficiently. So I think those things, Steve, will be better.
Go ahead, Eric.
I think another thing that can help build trust and show the value, whether it's a program or an event, is a post-mortem report of some sort. So as we've said here before, you start with the end in mind. That's how I like to say that if you ever did any of those mazes in a book when you were a kid, it's a lot easier to do it if you start at the end. You're like, wow, it's totally easy. So if you start with that end in mind, hey, what are your, and we've talked about, what are your outcomes over the output that you would like to see at this event? And then you're scheduling an event, learning sessions, activities based on what they would like people to be able to do when that ends. And then I'm big on surveys and getting everyone's input. I do it, everyone from the leaders to the SMEs to the instructors to the students. I get them to do a survey, because that way everyone feels like they had some input, and that helps. And then I run all the answers of the survey through ChatGPT and say, hey, these were my goals. Can you tell me can you pull data points from people? And it comes out great, because it's always so polite and balanced. So it's so great. It's like, certainly, Eric, I can help you with that. John thought, to your point on building a better relationship with their cohorts, John said X, Y, Z. And you can take all that information and come away with at least a good 2 or 3 pages in your dozen-page report. Definitely have an executive summary. But it helps culminate those data points and helps tell the story.
Love it. Listeners of the Enablement Edge, or those who watch us on YouTube, know that we end every episode by asking our guests 3 questions. Since we have 3 guests here.
And 3 minutes.
And 3 minutes. I'll ask each of you one. We're going to start with Micah, or we're going to start with Eric. We're going to flow one way or the other. You have no mic. We're going to start with Micah, and we're going to go this way. So you get the first one by luck of random draw then. Looking into your crystal ball, within the realm of enablement, what do you think is going to really significantly change in the next 18 to 24 months?
Well, I mean, if I don't say AI, I'm probably not invited back because it's coming our way whether we like it or not. The other really good thing is I think all of us in this room are seeing enablement rise. 10 years ago, this room would have been empty at every place. You know, at 3,000%, 300% rise. I can't remember what the exact number is. Enablement is on the rise, and so I think a year from now, this room is bigger. I think a year from now, our voice is bigger. There are only two ways to increase the capacity of a sales team. You can hire more salespeople, or you can make the ones you have more effective. And we're not going to. You're seeing that budget constraint. Our job is going to be increasingly important as the world gets more complicated, as AI makes it more complicated. I am very bullish on the future of enablement.
All right. And the question to you then, Victoria, would be, what's not going to change? What's never going to change?
Sellers. What's never going to change?
Or at least not going to change within this
I think everything
couple
changes.
of years. What's not going to change? While our world's getting rocked by AI and all this, what's going to remain the same?
I think just really talking more specifically coming from the AI technology investments, I think what's not going to change is the need to transform at a fast pace. So as an enablement organization, I think we really need to make sure that we understand that we either adapt or adapt to that change. Otherwise, we're not going to successfully be in that vision, which I also agree, right? These new technology implementation, AI coming, all those infrastructures that are in place will require us to be more creative, more to focus on more specific things. So I think that's going to stay. We have to continue to educate ourselves, to learn a little bit more, and apply different things to make it.
Final question, Eric. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
To be succinct.
And it's a wrap.
I mean, I'm constantly given that piece of advice. I don't know if I ever take it. But yeah, if I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter, right? Edit. I would say also tie yourself to behavior change and change management. The only constant is change. So you don't want to be an order taker. You don't want to be in training. They're always going to need people to help the team and the company pivot and be agile and have change management. And as behavior change experts, that's what you want to hang your hat on.
Fantastic. What a great place to stop. Thank you all so much. Big round of applause for our guests today. I feel this worked as a session. I hope you agree. I hope it works as a podcast and as a YouTube video. We will soon find out. And I hope that you all who perhaps didn't know about the Enablement Edge or hadn't yet dug in, I hope you will take a look, whether you prefer to watch on YouTube, listen on your favorite podcast channel. We really are doing our absolute best to bring on some great guests and hopefully get out some great education and inspiration for you all. And we would appreciate your viewership and your listenership. And thank you very much for today.
Thank you.
The Enablement Edge is brought to you by the team at Seismic. Seismic is the global leader in enablement, keeping organizations on the cutting edge of engaging customers, enabling teams, and igniting revenue growth. You can learn more at seismic.com.